Welcome to Leaders, Letters, and Legacy, the podcast where the past, present, and principal collide and inspire. We're thrilled you're here as we explore the life lessons and leadership moments that continue to shape the fraternity and sorority experience. Along with Dr. Ann Callais, I'm Scott Fussell, and it is a good day, a really, really good day to tell a great story. Let's go. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to part 2 of our conversation with the legendary Ginny Carroll. Ginny is the former exec at Alpha Zeta Delta and is the current exec at Circle of Sisterhood Foundation. She founded the organization about 10 years ago, and the impact that they have had on girls and women across the globe has been extraordinary. The mission of the organization is to remove educational barriers for girls and women globally. So we hope you enjoy this deeper look into Circle, and we hope you'll share it, because the opportunity to change a life and change the world is easier than you think, and it's right there in front of us.
It just makes sense. We're the most educated women in the world, right? A collective. And so I think when we decided to establish an entity, we had our 501c3 status in less than a year. And that's
unheard of.
Because sorority women, sorority women have power. And so somebody told me about an attorney. I called her Bulldog Bailey by the time I was finished working with her. Because I'm sure you two know Diane Bailey. She said, this is what I need. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, sit tight. And we had our status within like 9 months. So if there were not a lot of people like her and Mary Ann and people like that who pro bono, like we had a lot of volunteers and a lot of people connected. You know, we threw an orange bag on Mary Ann's shoulder and made her walk around a meeting, and people would ask her what the orange bag meant. And then she had to talk about it. So, you know, it was just building a community of people who understood. And even to this day, when I'm talking to undergraduate women, there's 3 things you need to remember. That's it. 70% of out-of-school youth in the world are girls. 2/3 of illiterate adults in the world are women. And the community you belong to is college educated, and not even 7% of the world is college educated. Like, that's all I have to say for people to be like, we need to do something about this. Right.
There's a lot that goes on the college campus, but if you mention Circle of Sisterhood, every campus I'm on, right? Circle of Sisterhood. We're doing Circle of Sisterhood. We're doing Circle. I don't know of anything in modern times in sorority world that collectively has stuck, right? Mm-hmm. The way that Circle of Sisterhood has. Can you think of anything? Because I can't think of anything that brings the communities on college campuses of sorority women together, and fraternity men or whoever else will listen to them, to do something together for a cause that isn't their own cause, but it's a cause that they can get behind.
Yeah. That's never going to change. Domestic philanthropy is never going to change. Fraternities and sororities have their philanthropy, and that's always going to happen. We are always going to give in that way. This is a way for communities to come together around a global humanitarian effort, right? Which is a little different than that. And so for the communities, it's like letters don't matter. Letters don't matter. We are probably in most cases, I would say, probably, I don't know, more than 90% of cases, the Panhellenic community is the largest women's organization on campus.
Absolutely.
Almost 100% of the time. And so why wouldn't they bring their community together and the people around their community to just, we don't ask a lot. Some do a lot, for sure. But we tell them anything they raise makes a difference. $53 sends a girl to school in some parts of the world with all she needs for a full year.
Unbelievable.
Pencil, notebook, tuition, uniforms, and school lunch every day for the entire year. $53.
And that truly changes lives.
Right.
Truly changes lives.
Yeah, I don't think people quite understand how far a little bit goes. Mm-hmm. So before I want to get back into that idea shortly, but we've talked a lot about this thing called Circle of Sisterhood, C of S. We haven't really told people what the heck do you do? People are hearing education, et cetera, women and girls, global humanitarian effort. Ginny, spend a few minutes just telling our listeners exactly what Circle's mission is and how you unleash the power of sorority to make it happen.
So literally, okay, so read the book, engaged the community, started a foundation and the Circle of Sisterhood Foundation, and it's a 501c3 U.S. charity. Our mission is to raise financial resources to remove barriers to education for girls and women facing poverty and oppression around the world. And so to do that, so we are a granting organization. So organizations that work on the ground around the world, solving their issues in their own communities. We don't know how to solve their issues. They know how to solve their issues. So we are funding their work. So we grant dollars to organizations working on the ground around the world to remove the barriers to education. That's one program area. And then we also have a program area, our school construction area, school builds. So our donors, and it's been campuses that have done this, it's been individuals that have done this, fund the construction of a school. And our 45th school was just completed in the 7th country. And that's in,
Come on now.
I know. And we started that in 2013. So in 11 years. So that is literally a donor funding construction expertise, like the masons, to make sure it's a sound structure. We have an implementing partner who helps us do that. And they work with the Minister of Education in the countries. We don't know how to solve people's problems. They have to solve their own. And then they have to continue to sustain themselves so they can continue to meet those issues, right? And so they literally build their own school. They have all the materials. They build their own schools. They agree, because for us, there's a covenant with the community that 50% of the students in those schools need to be girls. And so for us to fund a school, you need to put your girls in school. And so these communities agree to that. And if they get it done in a certain period of time, if they take care of the school, they can get another school block. And so we continue to find ways to help these communities through our implementing partner just grow what they can do. Because you may have 1,200 people in a community, 600 of those are kids. They need to go to school, and sometimes they're walking 2 hours to get to a school. So the structure conducive to learning, not only for that community, but sometimes for people in other communities as well.
And we'll be right back. Scott Fussell's approach to mental health and well-being programming is, shall we say, it's just different. If you're looking for content heavy on the clinical side, Scott's probably too engaging and maybe a little too authentic for your organization. However, if you're seeking a refreshingly transparent, application-rich, and shame-free message, you can now say, I know a guy, and his story sounds really familiar. After the show, head over to scottfussellcoaching.com and check out the many ways Scott can empower you, your family, your community, or your organization with the tools needed to experience true transformation. Scott Fussell Coaching and Consulting, well-being and parenting programming that meets you right where you are. Now back to the show. So talk about the process. So I'm up at the University of Tennessee. I decide I want to do something for Circle of Sisterhood. Tell me what that might look like from idea conception to we're going to Senegal.
So literally you mean just for the school build or anything?
Start with the school build and we'll come back to anything.
Okay. So funny that you would pick University of Tennessee because they're on their 4th school build. So they have funded the construction of 3 schools already. So it depends on not every university is going to raise $50,000, right? And so again, any amount raised by any university, any campus community is doing good in the world. If the campus wants to raise, the average right now is about $49,000 to fund the construction of a school in one of those 7 places. They have a 2-year period of time to do it. So they need to raise a deposit first. And as soon as that deposit is raised, then that's where we pull the trigger to work with our implementing partner and the Minister of Education to find the location, right? So they can't just say, oh, we're going to fund a school build and then not do it, because a community is going to eventually be told that they're going to be getting a school. And so they're going to be waiting. But there's so once the deposit is, they raise that, then they have 2 years to raise the rest of it, and the deposit is $15,000. So these schools are doing that in a pretty short period of time. Tennessee has a event they hold every year that helps them to raise the money, but they are a machine. I mean, they are, but that's a huge state school, right? And so we have, since the beginning, we've had more than 330 campuses that have supported us in our efforts. And they come and go. COVID was a knock. That hurt everybody. And we lost probably 100 campuses during that transition because, when there's nobody on campus for 2 years, they don't know what they're doing. They don't have a circle. So we've just had to, but consistently we've had over 200 campuses supporting us every year. And they do, I mean, they always ask us for ideas. We're like, you guys are the most creative people on the planet. We don't need to give you ideas, but they do all kinds of things. And so the school build is a big project. And so if a school, they have a certain period of time they have to do it because we got to, our people are implementing, they have to find the location. They have to work with the Ministry of Education to make sure the community is okay to get to school. I mean, there's so many things that happen behind the scenes to help it happen that a school can't say we want to fund a school build and then do it in 5 years. That's just not, it's got to happen within a 2-year period of time.
Well, and you lose momentum. I mean, those folks move on and, have you had chapters to do that also? Like an individual chapter to raise money?
We did. Actually, the Phi Sigma Sigma chapter at Rutgers University.
Oh, Sandy Grossman's going to love that shout out. Sandy Grossman.
They literally funded a school build and that chapter took a trek. So with our school builds, an option is that a team of 15 can go and live with the community in the community for a week and help them dig trenches and bend rebar and paint and make bricks and work alongside the community on the project.
I mean, what a life-changing.
Oh, God.
And, we talk about, Scott and I and you, we have all talked about values and ritual and all these things, but wow, putting that into action, right, is just remarkable. I've been around those 5 Sigs and I told them, I said, you bring a whole new meaning to building to the walls of the pyramid. I mean, that is, so shout out to that chapter, that organization, that institution, because it's big. It's really big. So I love that. What a great opportunity.
I would say for our school builds, probably 50% of the donors who fund those projects take a trek. Not everybody does. We are very clear about white saviorism, right? So
say that one more time, Ginny.
We're very clear about white saviorism.
And what does that mean?
What that means is, some people can look at a trek as 15 white chicks going into a community in Africa to help them fund construction. This is not volunteerism. This is not what these trek teams do. They've not only raised the money to fund the construction of this school, but they then go in and live with the community and learn about their culture and experience their culture in lots of different ways. So they're actually meeting with segments of that community to understand where they are and what they're doing. And then they stand beside them and work the build. I mean, they are digging. I mean, I went on our first trek and I've never used a pickaxe in my life until then. And so pickaxing foundation, making bricks, bending rebar, painting, doing all the things the community does. And part of what we try to do, because our groups are usually all women, is show women what women can do, right? And so the women in the community who've never played a role like that stand beside us and dig the foundation and make the bricks and do all the things that we're doing, and with babies on their backs, and love every minute of it because they've never been asked to. Also, whenever we fund school construction, there's always a leadership team from the village or community, wherever we are. And that leadership team is 50% men and 50% women. And for some of these women, they've never, ever in their entire lives served in a leadership role of any kind in their community. And so these communities get to a point where they're like, we want to change things. We want all of our children educated. We want to show how important education is to our community and what it can do for us, because they're starting to see that more. And so it's really a unique experience. The methodology used by our implementing partner is tremendous. And if they were not as focused on women's equity as we in education as we are, then we probably wouldn't have chosen them.
And we'll be right back. Dr. Ann Callais is a nationally recognized facilitator and leader in building belonging and organizational culture. With over 25 years of experience in higher ed and strategic initiatives, Ann empowers teams and communities to feel seen, valued, and connected. Her work blends story, research, music, and heart to bring people together around purpose and identity. To learn more about how Dr. Callais can help your organization or community build belonging and connection, strengthening and cultivating a values-based culture, go to maryanncallais.com. Now back to the show.
So Jenny, can you share a story? Have you followed any of the girls that you have I'm talking about that have been benefited from fill in the blank, right? A school build or funding. I don't know. I don't know how that process has unfolded through the years.
We live in the higher education community, so we assess everything. And we assess our Trek teams on site, 1 year later, 3 years later, and we just recently did a 10 years later. Now, you want to hope that everybody responds, but everybody doesn't always respond. And so it's interesting to see because most of them are still engaged or interested in women's issues. There's one example is one woman I went on a trek with in 2013 from University of Missouri. And I can't even remember what her degree was at the time, but since that trek where she had gone and lived in this community in Senegal and with the families, with a particular family, and got to know that community and just the experience. It's just life-changing. She moved on and started working in nonprofit work. So chose to go to nonprofit work. And now she's 10 years out of that experience. And now she's in med school. She's going to become a doctor, women's doctor. And so so you see stories like that where if you sat down with her, she would say to you, there was an impact there. And it's kind of changed my trajectory. We had one woman who was a fashion design major who changed started to go into nonprofit work. It's interesting to see at that young age, that kind of an impact on these young women. The stories are, and then when you get to talk to them after they've been through it, it's just.
Yeah. Talk about some of the girls or women that you've supported on site that have benefited from Circle's either resources or the build itself. I was thinking last year you were having a donor event. I think it was a thank you event. And there were some videos that you guys are pulling up and kind of curating and trying to determine, okay, what story is compelling here? And they all are. So maybe talk about a couple of the girls or women whose lives have been changed because they now have access to an education.
Boy,
good luck narrowing it down, by the way.
Yes, right. There's an interesting line because when it comes to the school build, we really have to step out, right? So after these teams have done this construction of these schools, they want to hang on because they've built relationships and they really care about this community, but the community cannot depend on us, right? And so those teams have to step away and leave the community to be self-sufficient. Because if you tell the community, I'm coming back, or you tell the community you're going to send them something, they're going to sit and wait. And so there's really a break between the Trek team and that community because the community has to self-sustain. They can't depend on us or build on our implementing partner or anybody else, right, to sustain them. They've got to do it on their own. And so there's really a break in there from those relationships. It doesn't mean we don't get reports. We know that the school is successful. We know how many students are in the schools. We know for a fact that over 5,000 students have learned in classrooms that were funded by Circle of Sisterhood donors, right? When I went into Senegal, into that community, the children were learning under these thatched roofed hut type shaped buildings, not even buildings. They didn't even have sides. And the principal was worried about scorpions. And so, and now they have a structure conducive to learning for generations, right? And so, and their challenge is to maintain it, and they usually do, and then they get more schools. But with our grants award program, which is where we give money to organizations who apply to us for funding and we fund the projects they're trying to do. You wouldn't believe the barriers. I mean, the barriers. I didn't know before all of this that puberty was a barrier to education, right? I didn't know all of the barriers. I mean, we have grantees who ask us for latrine door, right? So
Right.
we don't think about not having that. We don't think about not having a classroom. We don't think about any of that here. And I know a lot of people wonder about there's a lot going on in this country. We need help here. And that's true. And we do grant money in the United States. But our grants are $10,000, and in the United States that's nothing. That's nothing here. Where $10,000 to a small community in Thailand is significant, or a small community in Zimbabwe is significant, or a small community anywhere. So anyway, we hear the stories, we get feedback from our grantees, and the stories are just like, we don't know these people face to face, but we get to see and sometimes hear how they feel about the fact that they can now earn a living. And so I think those are the things that for me have most impact, as the young women who either they are now literate and they've learned a trade. And so, because we do that too, it's not just about girls' butts and seats in classrooms. There's also women who need to be literate and prosperous. And so to hear from these women who've been trained, who now have their own fruit stands or whatever it is that they're doing and earning a living, is just significant. And hearing how happy they are about that, or the photographs we get photographs. I mean, the things that we see and the impact that we know we're having and the ripple of that impact. So if you educate a woman, she is going to, and she can earn an income, over 90% of what she earns is going to go back into her family.
That's right.
Right?
Mhm.
And so, she's going to educate her kids. Yeah. But anyway, so there's so many, we get lots of videos and pictures and the reports that we get from our grantees about the work that they're doing, the obstacles they have to face. I mean, it's just stunning. And for us to be able to help in any way is significant. So I can't grasp the amount of impact we've had over, it's 14 years now, Scott. I know it doesn't seem like that long ago, but 2010. And so
Hmm.
it's just every day. I mean, there's pictures that I look at every day that I'm like,
Sure.
just remind me of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah. Ginny, I think the school build seems like a really big deal,
And people can picture it.
and people can picture it, right? But talk about some of those. You mentioned the latrine stall doors. Talk about some of the really small ways. Like, you've got a smaller Panhellenic council or community, and they raise $10,000. Talk about how far that $10,000 goes. You mentioned, gosh, that's nothing in the United States, but you go to Thailand or Senegal or name a remote village. What can you do with that money? Talk about the cost of school supplies, uniforms, all those things.
I mean, yes. And a $10,000 grant could be helping when the ripple occurs, 1,000 children, right? $10,000 could help 400 women in one community. I mean, and so if you think about that, just the impact of that, or the program or the building, like for example, we helped put $5,000 put electricity in a girls' school in Peru, and they'd never had electricity. And so the thank you notes we were getting from them not only talked about like now they're on the internet. And so now they can learn from the internet, but they also thanked us for their security lights because they never had them. And so every time, I mean, almost every time the grants material goes through, I'm like, oh my God, you just don't even think about the barriers that people are dealing with. And so these girls, I can picture them in my mind right now. These girls in their red sweaters and their white button downs and their little school skirts standing around a computer because they've never had one before. And now they're on the internet, and we have learned since that they started a relationship with a sister school in Great Britain. So here they are now communicating with a school halfway around the world. And so there's that ripple of that one $5,000 grant, like what that community and school could do with just $5,000 is
$5,000.
significant. Right.
Their lives were changed because
Yeah.
they're now safer because of security light. Their world was changed because now they are learning globally and they've got connections to people that aren't even on the same continent.
No more borders.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And, I think the saddest for me sometimes is the sex trafficking. And so, we've
Sure.
helped organizations who are helping young girls come out of that trade, sex trade. And so these are organizations who, this one in particular, built this community of round homes, like little round homes. And the women, because you can't just pull a child who has been, Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Wu Dunn in their book, Half the Sky, equated, and I'm going to paraphrase, equated sex trafficking this way. A 8-year-old sold, stripped naked, drugged into submission, locked in a room, raped 15 times a day until she dies of AIDS. So when I read that in that book, you don't think I didn't get pissed off? I mean, that would piss off anybody. And so this particular entity would rescue these girls, like they would work with the government and literally break into these facilities and bring these girls out. But you can't just put them on the street because they're addicted. And so they bring them into these spaces where they can live in a community where they can learn to trust again, where they are get the care that they need so that they're no longer addicted and learn a trade. They're educated, they learn a trade. And so their whole life is changing, right? And then they go out. Interestingly, a lot of these young girls want to go out and help other young girls that are in the same situation. But I could tell you a story okay. So the organization that we helped fund several years ago was called Love 146. And the reason, because I thought that was a really interesting name, so I did the research. And the reason it was called Love 146 is because it was 2 men and a woman that founded this organization. They were trying to get girls out of away from sex trafficking in the Philippines. And so the men of this trio would go and pretend they were customers so they understood what they were up against, right? And so they would be taken into this little room where there was a two-way window and the curtain would be moved back. And in this two-way window, they would be looking at this room full of little girls. And all the little girls would have numbers attached to their body. And so the men were just supposed to pick a number, right? And one of the men tells the story that he was looking in this, and and this little girl just kept staring at the window. And I don't know if he didn't know if she knew that it was a two-way mirror or what, but she kept staring at the window because the rest of the girls in the room were staring at a television set, right? So their focus elsewhere, but this little girl kept staring at the two-way mirror. And her number was 146. And so they called the organization Love 146. And so they literally build these homes and these facilities so that these girls can learn to trust again, can learn to live, can be educated, can learn a trade, because you can't just put them on the street. They'll go right back. And so they put them on the street armed with a way to prosper, which is significant. But there's stories
Ginny,
like that, Scott, that are like,
Yeah.
blow your mind.
Well, I don't think most people know this, but there are more people in slavery today than at any other time in history. Many of them, gosh, I may even say most of them are in sex slavery. And I don't know that average Joe on the street understands that. And it's heartbreaking when you hear those stories.
Right. There are also boys.
Yeah.
I mean, the majority are girls, but there are also boys that are being sex trafficked.
And Ginny, I think one of the things that is kind of causes me to scratch my head a little bit is that how do we get our students, right, to understand that some of the behaviors that we create, do you understand where I'm coming from? Like, we should be lifting each other up and helping one another as well, because we should know better.
Yeah.
I hate to say it like that. Like, these folks that we're talking about, that you're sharing with us, they've never known more or better. And yet we call it privilege. And I know that word can be used in all kind of different ways, but for us to be educated and to understand that we do have a responsibility to help those close to us and those far from us.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things about fraternity and sorority that we have got to get our heads wrapped around again. That because we are privileged, because we are afforded this opportunity, we have a responsibility to one another and others, right? That's why we were founded.
We hope you've enjoyed this part of our conversation with Ginny Carroll. We'll see you next time on Leaders, Letters, and Legacy. You've been listening to Leaders, Letters, and Legacy. The show is produced by Scott Fussell and hosted by Dr. Ann Callais and Scott Fussell. Background noise is provided by Bailey, Bentley, and Lincoln. Spousal support provided by Sue and Ree. For more, be sure to follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And to help others find the show, be sure to rate and review the podcast before logging out. Leaders, Letters, and Legacy is an L3 Learning production.